Election lawsuits are difficult to win. They're difficult to win when you're talking about a small local election where you can kind of get your hands around what happened, or if there was any fraud or improprieties, you might have some idea of who was responsible and who may have done it. But when you're talking about a national election where you're talking about tens of millions of people voting from coast to coast, from sea to shining sea in Alaska, Hawaii, everywhere, it's much more difficult because there is a time constraint on it, and you've got to gather facts, and you've got to have real evidence. And there's just a small window of time to get that evidence. So even if there are problems with an election, winning an election lawsuit is very difficult. And if you're going to uncover fraud, your best bet is probably like down the road, whether it's 6 months, a year, 2 years, to really uncover everything that may have happened if it happened. But right now, the president is busy filing lawsuits a week after the election. Court TV anchor Michael Ayala has been following every bit of it. This has been like your full-time job now.
Yes, it is.
So what's the latest today? What's happening?
All right, let's start off in Arizona, Vinny. It's been another robust day. If you remember, we talked about a suit filed about overcounts yesterday. Well, today, lawyers for the Trump campaign asked for all evidence in that case to be kept secret because of voter identifying info. That is not unusual. They also promised to include videotape evidence of what they claim. Now, if you remember, we talked about it yesterday. Overvote is when a ballot looks like it's been voting for two candidates in one race. You put that into the machine. It lets you know it's an overvote. It's supposed to, according to election law, be destroyed. You're supposed to be given another chance to vote. But the lawsuit claims that election workers told folks to push a green button, which would be a cast button, which would then cast the vote, but they're not sure exactly how that went. So lawyers from Maricopa County, they also gave their response today, and they said, wait a second, we want this stuff to be out in the open, not secret, because we want the world to see how flimsy your information is. They also said that they checked the machines while approximately 156,000 votes were cast in Maricopa County. Those electronic machines actually record when overvotes happen. They said only 180 overvotes actually happened, not the thousands that was alleged by the Trump campaign. They also said that the Republicans set up a website, and that website was seeking out other voters who had to deal with this overvote issue. Now I want to call up that screen that we were looking at before, which shows some of the questions on that website. And basically, they ask questions like, did someone push the green button for you? Yes, no. Other answers also asking, did you know at the time of pressing the button that it meant that at least one of your votes would be disregarded? Again, yes, no, and other answers. The idea is if they answer the right way, they might be contacted, added to the suit, give them more ammunition. It's actually at don'ttouchthegreenbutton.com. So the Maricopa County lawyers said, you know what? That's just really serves no purpose, undermines the entire process. And everyone will get an opportunity to argue this case on Thursday morning, Vinny, 9:30 a.m. So we'll keep an eye on that for everyone.
It reminds me of, and we've seen advertisements, for these class action lawsuits, right?
Yes.
Where lawyers are looking for, all right, are there people out there that we don't know about? Here, they're not necessarily looking for people to be, I guess they would be part of the lawsuit if they feel like their vote wasn't counted. But interesting tactic. Again, the time is the biggest problem here. You don't have time to investigate this stuff. What about Pennsylvania? What's going on there? Are things heating up?
Yeah, a little bit, Vinny. Of course, we don't know much about the Supreme Court case. They have not ruled on that at all. But today, in one of the lawsuits filed there, the Secretary of State, Kathy Boockvar, she filed a response to a lawsuit seeking dismissal of their case because she says there is no claim at all stated. She's also requesting for an expedited review. If you remember, we talked about this case. Donald Trump filed in district court seeking injunctive relief. He wants the state of Pennsylvania to not be able to certify their vote because he claims that there are over 620,000 votes that have been subjected to illegal actions according to election law. Couple of things that he's claiming we've heard before. The ballots were not properly observed by the parties. They also claim that the Democrats in Democratic-heavy counties were allowed to correct damaged ballots, but in Republican-heavy counties, they were not. So he's claiming there was an equal protection issue. Again, that came up, and we all know, Bush v. Gore, it sends a tingle down our spines, but this is not that kind of case, trust me. And the hope is that, Vinny, they can get enough votes thrown out so that they can get into that zone of 0.5% and force a recount, and maybe in that way achieve what they're looking for, of course, is to get those votes. So I checked in with another election expert, Stephen Kaufman. He runs the Kaufman Law Group. They're out in California. Election law is all they do. They actually were involved in the Harris campaign. And here's what he had to say about this particular lawsuit, about whether this one would have some meat or some legs.
There are two fundamental factors that have to be established in bringing a case of election fraud. Number one, you have to actually prove that fraud took place, which we haven't seen in any of these lawsuits. And two, you have to show that the fraud was so widespread that it changed enough votes to change the outcome of an election. So that's a very high hurdle to have to overcome. And thus far, we haven't seen anything that comes even close to establishing either of those allegations.
Yeah, and as you said, Vinny, all those things are difficult, finding the evidence and the time constraints added to that as well. So not looking great for the Trump campaign on that front.
Well, one thing that did happen, and we spoke about it yesterday, was the Attorney General Barr, talked about dispatching folks from the Department of Justice to take a look at this and see, in cases where there is some level of actual evidence of something may be going on, to actually investigate it before results are certified. What's going on there?
Yeah, you know, Vinny, that has created quite a stir. Now, as you remember, you said that the memo from Attorney General Barr said that prosecutors now go out and look into cases with, quote, clear and apparently credible allegations of irregularities. So that could add some teeth to these lawsuits. But that actually goes against a long-standing Department of Justice rule that they don't get involved in these elections until after the votes are certified. And there's reasons for that, which I'll get into a little bit later. So today, one of the elections crime branch directors, they quit their job. They resigned. They said, look, we don't want to be involved in partisan politics. That's not what the Department of Justice does. And in fact, all across the country, it received a lot of scathing reviews. And specifically, the Michigan Attorney General, Dana Nessel, she is a Democrat, but she had this to say about it. She said the purpose of the longstanding Department of Justice policy delaying election fraud investigations is to avoid casting unwarranted doubt on the legitimacy of the democratic process. And likewise, the purpose of yesterday's memo is to assist the president in his current efforts to do just that, and to cast unwarranted doubt on the legitimacy of the democratic process. She also went on to say, look, we don't need the federal government. We have checked our stuff here. Everything is on the up and up. If there need to be any investigations, as a state, we can handle it. So I had to go again and ask Stephen Kaufman. I said, what about the involvement of these federal prosecutors? Is that going to add more teeth? Is that going to make these lawsuits more likely to succeed? And also, are we on solid ground? Can we believe that we have the right candidate in office, or the right candidate won? Here's what he had to say.
As it stands right now is actually a vastly improved system over what we saw 2 decades ago when we had the last presidential crisis. And in fact, it's extremely robust. And if you look at the amount of votes that were cast in this election, I think we should all be proud of the fact that in the middle of a pandemic, we found ways to get ballots in the hands of voters, and voters found ways to get those votes cast and submitted properly and legally to election officials who are going through a process to make sure that those votes are all counted the way they are intended to be counted.
You know, but he makes a great point. Even with COVID and all the things going on, it really showed the greatness of the American system, of our voting, of our elections, that through all that, we still were able to accomplish what we accomplished. And a lot of people are upset that Trump seems to be throwing a lot of dirt on the process.
Yeah, well, I mean, and the Michigan Attorney General saying this casts doubt on it, but unless you have, there's already doubt. It's not like this is casting by Barr sending people out is not casting the doubt already exists. It's just who is doubting it is the question. And it's completely down party lines. One side is doubting it, the other side isn't. 4 years ago, it was the opposite. The other side doubted and attacked the legitimacy and said Russia won the election for 4 years, right? I mean, so it's no different. It is no different. It is the same thing. It's politics. That's why I hate covering it on the show. But I like covering the lawsuits with you, Michael.
Yeah,
which is what's
fantastic.
important.
I love
because
reading these lawsuits.
through your analysis, I think people are getting the message that these things are almost impossible to win.
Yes, that's
Okay.
absolutely true.
Michael Ayala, Court TV anchor. Great to have you on.